G'day, Mike from Aussie Mike's Bees, and welcome back to another Talks with Experts. Today's expert comes from Slovenia. He's a professor at the University of Ljubljana, Janko Božič. Stay tuned and let's learn some European perspective about Varroa. Welcome back. I first got to know Janko through his online program through the university for beekeepers, and it's all in English, so anyone can sign up to it. And there I learned a great deal about the Slovenian way of beekeeping, very different to the Western way. But that's a topic for another conversation. Today's conversation is about Varroa. But first of all, he has written a book, and to my knowledge, it's the only English book on Slovenian beekeeping, or AZ, AZ hives. So that's enough of a plug about that. If you want to learn more, I'll leave a link down in the comments. In the meantime, let's make a warm welcome to Janko and we'll get on with the talk. Welcome, Janko, and it's great to have you here. I'd like to get started just to get the audience to get to know you a little bit about how you first got into bees and what that was like at that time.
Yeah.
Can you tell me something about the beginnings?
That is now 46 years ago, you know. Yeah, because when I started in a bee club was 50 years ago. It was school year, 73, 74. It was just interesting club in the school, you know, free to enter and learn about something related with the farm life, you know, because my family has a small farm, and so I said, okay, at least something, and then I enjoyed it. We had a good mentor there who taught us about bee life and how to keep bees, how to do with the bees. We had our own bee house at school, so we worked in that bee house when was possible. Of course, nice weather and so on. And yeah, that I got close to that. At the end of the school, okay, I was thinking what to do. I was thinking to go maybe to high school for farmers, but they said go to the grammar school. So I went to grammar. I enrolled in grammar school, but before the school started, actually, my father made something unexpected. He invited my mentor at house as a guest to talk with her, and he suddenly said, "Oh, my son is would like to start keeping bees. What we can do?" Okay. Then maybe that's good. So yeah, she gave me my first colony, and we bought a new hive. And then I've got one old hive from the neighbor. These were my two hives. So, but I started with one colony in 78. And then 79, I multiplied to 4 colonies. Then in 80, I multiplied to around 10 or 11 colonies. So I had to buy colonies on. But these first 2 years were still with no knowledge about Varroa mites or any attention. Maybe we heard in 79 that somewhere in the east of Europe, somewhere in Russia is spreading Varroa mite toward the Europe. But okay, we didn't pay attention a lot, but in 1980 we've got Varroa mite already. So Varroa mite arrived in our country. We've got some strange chemical application, so it was some acaricide applied to some rolls of cardboard that was put in a smoker, some Japan product. I think it was bromopropylate, active substance. Not very pleasant one.
It doesn't sound good.
But it was,
and you're smoking that in, so you're actually fuming it.
We had to fume in. Yeah, we got special adapters, you know, for our smokers that you go through the entrance, and you just push several smokes inside, and yeah, it was fumigated, and yeah, Varroa was killed. It was manageable, but not very good for bee products and our health as well. Okay, but it looked much different, you know. I in my colonies, since I treated it when I observed first mites on bees also, and drones and drone brood. You know, today if I saw such frequency of the Varroa mites, my colony would be already nearly dead. But at that time it was possible to see a colony, really very weak colony with some with bees around, a little of brood, all half uncaped brood, and a lot of mites in a brood on a bee. So practically each bee had a mite, and inside of the brood a lot of mites. That you cannot see anymore anywhere in the world, I think. So Varroa mite is not doing any more direct damage that it used to do, because at that time viruses were spread in other way than today. Now Varroa mites became kind of spreader of the viruses, and that's the most devastating now. So it's just getting blood from the other bee which has some viruses and transfer to another bee which has not yet viruses. So spreading of viruses is much faster, and through the years these viruses are multiplied in our population of the bees. So it's very hard to keep them down, but the only way to keep them down to kill the spreader, that's Varroa mite. Most of the signs that we see in the colonies that are dying today with the bees are really because of the viruses, mainly. So could be also some other stuff, but viruses are killing bees because of Varroa mites. So that's the big difference.
One of the main viruses I hear about is deformed wing virus, but there's others as well.
Yeah, the fourth wing virus is most spread, but I think maybe it's not the most dangerous, because we can see that virus actually very soon, and it's still possible to with the reduction of the mites load, to reduce also viruses, and somehow to revitalize the colony to go on. But if we will get those paralysis viruses, so these are more dangerous. We don't see so soon, but when we see, we will see a lot of bees crawling in front of the hive. No damaged wings, you know. They will just walk on the grass, and they try to climb on the grass. And if you see a lot of that in front of the bee house, your colonies will gone. Yeah, you cannot save them practically. It's but if there is just some bees, so we need really to observe what is going on. If there is some bees crawling in front, yeah, it's already spreading, but possible to reduce the mite load, also reduce the viruses, and bees colonies will recover and will be fine. Of course, the strength of the colonies, it's hard to achieve them very strong for the same season, but next season you could be in a good shape.
Incidentally, with Australia's case, we don't have the viruses that you do yet.
Yeah.
So we're actually in a fortunate position to learn how to deal with Varroa right now for when viruses do turn up.
Yeah, you might have very low frequency of the viruses. At least some you for sure have, because they're always present, you know. With the early importation of the bees in Australia, you've got also some population of the viruses, but not so strong to cause some damages. But now with the mites, it might start multiplicating. But that is not happening in a year or two, but needs several years, that you will have a whole population, also stronger population of viruses.
There's other viruses in Apimondia. They noted an outbreak of an unidentified virus in Iran, I think, and then also it seems to have turned up in Canada. So new viruses that were previously not affecting bees can suddenly become a problem with the Varroa weakening the bee's immune system.
We know some, you know, many viruses at different locations have been observed, and they're very similar, but it's also possibility maybe that during this evolution of the viruses, some can jump from other species to the bee. That's we cannot say that is not possible, but this is a possibility. Maybe also in Eastern Asia, some viruses was exchanged from Eastern bee to mellifera bee. I don't know exactly of this, which one and how much, but that's definitely one possibility. With the mite exchange between the populations, you get also then virus exchange, and also viruses are evolving, as we know for our coronavirus, how it's evolving through time. Also these viruses are evolving. So practically all of them are also RNA virus. So it's the same type. So it's a very changeable. So it's not very stable through long time period. What is surviving due to our management of the bees. And if there is a spreader like mites, they have lucky, that they can multiply easily and spread easily. So these are things that we need to think about. So keeping low mites, you're keeping low viruses, less chance to spread it. Yeah, and if you will keep mites at low level, you will keep also viruses at low level, and hopefully these devastating things will not come so soon, as is typical now.
I guess in a sense, it's basic beekeeping management to maintain strong, healthy colonies. So just about every other disease and pest we have, other than the likes of AFB, if it's a good, strong colony, it'll make it through. So the way to keep colonies strong and thriving with Varroa is just to keep knocking Varroa down. What about some of the programs I've seen around the world is to breed for Varroa resistance, ones that won't let the Varroa get out of control? Do you have any information
Yeah,
on that
that's.
side
I
of
think there
things?
are many programs around the world, many in Europe, but also in the States, with different kind of approaches. So there are also some, I would say, maybe just happened because of some natural circumstances, like keeping like wild colonies, and then they are still surviving in the nature. And one of the program is also to check for the survivals in forests, and then see what are mechanisms for their survival. But yeah, one big difference of living circumstances of those survivals and colonies in apiaries is that they're typically single colony in a forest, in a tree trunk, and it is hidden from the other colonies. So they are not getting rubbers from the other colonies. So they will not have exchange of the mites from the other colonies. So here selection can go based on single colony, and these mechanisms of spread is much less effective because it's a single colony inside of the forest, hidden from the other. So this prevention of the robbing is one of the crucial things, because that's the most frequent exchange of mites between colonies. Yeah, in nature that happens naturally. And if you have a hive, like on the margin of the forest, that canopy is going above the hives, you can really see, very rare that you would get some robbers from the other locations. So I have some experience from Ljubljana, which is quite crowded with the hives, so many beekeepers. It's not hard to get a beekeeper. Maybe average distance from hive location is 300 meters or even less. So many apiaries around. I have at the job now three hives, but there were 4 hives at the beginning of the summer in the forest. And one hive was without the queen. It was wrapped just from those colonies at the location, but not from the others. So you get some exchange between the hives in such circumstances at the same location, but not from the other hives from the other location. So it's very good to have hidden your small apiaries Also, during the summer, it's very good. Maybe early spring development is not so fast, but yeah, but for the summer, hot summer, it's good to have below the trees. I see, we see these big apiaries, many hives around on the sunshine, and we have this hot summer. That's crazy for the bees, and beekeepers are solving that problem to put plastic foundations inside that combs are not destroyed during the heat. Instead, making them a good shadow and some kind of colder place.
In some places, we can't escape the high temperatures. So in Australia, we can have over 40 degrees even
Air,
in
very
Australia.
hot air, and also
Yeah.
during the night, then you have a real problem. Yeah, I would say maybe
Yeah.
then you have to migrate to the colder area.
Yeah, I don't like the
Yeah,
cold. But we do have some cold areas in Australia that they do have proper brood
yeah.
breaks. So some of the strategies used in cooler climates can be used, but a lot of Australia, they're making brood almost
Yeah,
year
but it's
round.
also, if you have
And
very weak pasture in the summer and hot summer, it's a good time to do brood stop. Yeah,
yes, good point.
you don't need to get, if you have 1 month of very dry weather, no nectar flow, hot weather, just cage the queen and like for 2 weeks at least, and then you have a brood stop, and then you can treat with like oxalic acid, and you will get rid most of the mites, and then start more to stimulate brood rearing, but not, you're saving some also resources that and get rid of the mites if you have such long break of no serious pasture.
That's a really interesting point, Janko, because I hadn't considered the idea of doing a brood break in the middle of summer.
Yeah, in Mediterranean countries they are doing that. Actually, they they do in the summer, not in the winter, because winter is good for pasture. It's a mild, it might be around 15 to 20 centigrades most of the days at the sea coast, and bees will forage on nice flowering plants because there are many plants flowering in the winter in Mediterranean. But during the summer it's so hot and dry that they have nothing. And it's better to do brood breaking. Also, naturally, if bees are there living without support of the beekeepers, they're stopping rearing brood.
Right, and that's the time to get in and do some treatment. If the test proves that it requires. So test to see what the mite load is. Some people, I believe you might be able to confirm or otherwise that a lot of people made the mistake of not testing what their levels are. They just treat it anyway and thinking that that would do the
Yeah,
thing, and then not following up with another test to see that the treatment actually worked.
yeah. That's of course also any treatment is also harming bees. It's not completely unharmful, so we need to be somehow careful not to do it too much. As is needed, it's okay, but not too much. I know many beekeepers also still in our country are just going through the colonies with the same treatment, regardless of level of infestation, or just repeated it, and see in some colonies they will do the whole apiary, of course. In one way it's logical because it's hard. You cannot monitor each colony. You have 100 colonies. You cannot really. It's a lot of work to control each of the colony. To check like for Varroa mite load with some ethanol wash or sugar shake, or checking drone brood or brood, for the infestation. It's a lot of work to do in all colonies, but there are some even statistical approaches how many colonies you need to check, randomly selected to get like maybe 90% estimation of your infestation of the location. I'm not sure, is that for 100 around 8 or 7 or 12 colonies, but a range like that is typically. But if smaller number, much bigger proportion, if you have 20 colonies, you have to check maybe at least 6 colonies. But if you have 5, you have to check all of them. Something like that. But
That's right. And of course, you got more
Yeah, yeah,
accuracy that
because
way.
one colony means much more, or randomly you might get just that one
Yeah,
colony very strongly infested. But if there are more colonies,
yeah.
it's more likely that some of to get uh, infested colonies with your sample size.
So when you do that testing and you've gone over the threshold, so treatment is required, even though you've only tested maybe 10 out of 50 hives, you would then treat all 50
Yeah, I
in the
think in
apiary?
that case you will have to treat all of them because it will consume you too much time to check all the rest. Just treating the whole location
Right,
because you might, sometimes one hive would have maybe 1/10 of the mice that most infested, but if you leave that one, it will have maybe in half a year the same amount as the strongest one. And it would spread to the others.
so then you would follow up with a post-treatment test again to
Efficiency.
check how well the treatment worked. Would you test the same ones you originally tested, or deliberately go for different ones, or it
Now,
makes no
it makes
difference?
difference because if you check the same one, then you can really compare loads before and after. Then you can see real efficiency of your treatment. But if you don't have data
Right,
from before, you cannot do that. Yeah.
nothing to compare with.
But I
So
think,
test the
yeah,
same ones after the
a good
treatment.
thing
Right.
is perhaps, but if it's not a big apiary, these mesh boards are okay, but still, they say to have these sticky boards on the bottom and check for the mites on it. So this natural fall of the mites.
Yeah.
When you have such situation at us, that can be workable, but maybe beekeepers that don't have more than several tens of the hives, they can really continuously control each hive for the natural mite drop. It's workable, but
Right.
I know that big beekeepers, it's very hard to do it because it takes too much time to check each bottom board, for the mites load. So in
Right.
that case, again, it's maybe good idea to have some kind of to say sentinel hives to check it regularly and see what is happening, with this natural
Right.
fall.
So it's not practical if you've got a larger apiary to have the screen bottom board.
Yeah, because this bottom board, if you're not cleaning in a week, you will have there rearing conditions for hive beetle, as you know, you have a problem, and also wax moth will grow on the debris. So it's not good idea if you don't have really time to check it regularly. So that has to be cleaned at least on 10 days routine. And if not, you will grow these other pests which are not so harmful, but okay, still make some mess in the hive.
That's right. And from that could vector other diseases perhaps in all of that debris that's gathering
Yeah,
in the bottom.
yeah. I know that some German beekeepers preferring just to have mesh board on each hive and everything is falling down on the ground through the whole year, even through the winter. They still keeping, Germany winter could be harsh, and they still have a mesh in Langston's hives, mesh board all the time through the whole year, completely opened.
Right. And does that not, like, that would leave it open for wind or
There's no
something to come up
problem. There's
into the
just
brood?
you have to have strong colonies, like at least at
Right.
two Langstroth sections and strong colony inside. They manage well.
Right.
Okay,
And
I tried one colony like that. They survive, and everything is going down, and ants are taking away, and so on, from the floor, and yeah.
I have screen bottom boards with a
Yeah, and
sliding
then you have to
tray.
clean that sliding
And
tray. If you have a lot of pies,
but they're also
it's a lot
easy.
of work.
Yeah. Well, it can be but from a recreational
Yeah,
beekeeper's
it's good to
perspective
have
with relatively few
continuous
colonies.
control what is going on for the pest on weekly basis. You clean all
Yeah.
of that or 10 days, and it's great.
But I can certainly see how it would be way too much work for a
Yeah,
commercial beekeeper.
it's not economically to do it.
Right. At the moment, we don't have all the products that are available for treatments that other countries have had for many years. And in this initial phase, they've given a special permit for use of primarily the synthetic chemicals, Apivar and fluorethrant, and similar ones to that. I'm hoping that that's not how they settle in as the long-term solution. They've not allowed oxalic acid yet, but our government seems to be a little apprehensive about the safety of it. I think we'll end up getting there because it's all in the delivery, from what I see, is how dangerous it can be for a beekeeper. Do you have any thoughts along those lines? Should our government just let the products in that have been working elsewhere?
Yeah, on some way, yeah, it's safe decision to choose synthetic acaricides that are really killing the mites, but maybe be careful and check if those mites that you've got are not already resistant to some of those acaricides. We know that those flavonoid-based products, which are not flavonoid, like flumethrin and something like that, Varroa mites in most of the world developed quite fast resistance. Very slow development resistance was to amitraz, which is not so well accepted by some countries, but it's very effective and less resistant is happening. These are things which might be to consider. Somebody has to check if the mites which are in Australia have already developed resistance. It's a question from where it came. That could be a problem. Flumethrin-based product. Most of the population out of Europe is already of the mites is adapted somehow and have some better survival than like from amitraz. But this year we also heard they detected also resistance of mites to amitraz. I'm not sure how strong, but it was measurable. These compounds are working in different way to different targets, mainly to the nerve system of the mites. And nerve system of the mites is not far away from the nerve system of the bees, so it's not easy to select the compounds to have this distinguishing between mites and the bees. So always need to be careful with the concentrations and how to treat it. Although the difference is much bigger than with organic acid. That's also true. With organic acid, we have smaller difference between damage to the bees and killing of the mites. But mites had harder time to make resistance to them. So that's why organic acid are so popular on one way. And organic acids, like formic acid, mainly evaporates after a while. It could keep a little bit in honey, so you try to avoid to have honeycombs during the treatment anyway, not to have too high increased level of formic acid, which is naturally curing in the honey anyway. But you shouldn't have too high concentration, at least increased more than is natural one. And with the oxalic acid is something similar, but way of the treatments are different. So sometimes it's very hard to arrive into the honey because it's usually not a vapor. Although with the sublimation we exchange back to the crystals, fine crystals, which are then making healing process. But with solutions, bees are not eating the solutions. Typically, if they have sugar reserve or honey reserve to eat, because acidity is so high that bees avoid to eat it. So that's why we still see drops of sugar solution of oxalic acid in a hive after treatment. And this way of treatment is generally safe for the beekeeper. Sublimation could be dangerous for the health of the beekeeper. Not to have a proper protection for the face and eyes and everything.
Yes, the right sort of mask and gloves and.
So that could be problematic, and but there is developing some new treatments based on oxalic acid. Started in South America with mixture with glycerol. They already have a registered product in South America for South America. I know for Argentina for sure. It happens also like in Greece. They I think registered because there is one producer and people in Europe are buying from Greece, although not most of the country didn't register it, but open market they buy it.
Oh, really?
I think they made the solution for this way of treatment in New Zealand, as far as I know. Beekeepers are allowed to use some products like salicylic acid, formic acid in a way that they want, but it's their responsibility, I think something like that they made officially, so it's not a registered product, but you're not working against the law. But it's your responsibility.
Right, yes. In most countries around the world, you've got to use these products according to the label.
Yeah,
and
that's the point.
They've written them up for safe use and the right doses, so you don't overdose or underdose and don't harm yourself in the process.
Yeah.
So you've really got to follow the label to the letter.
Like with, of course, if managing formic acid could be very dangerous because you can get burns. So safety of the beekeepers could be a problem. So that's why in some countries they register those gel forms of formic acid operating from the pets. So already prepared pets with the formic acid, that's much safer. You just need gloves, maybe to open, but even it's not so dangerous, as liquid form. That's one possibility which can be offered to the beekeepers. Working with the evaporators, as is allowed here in Europe. That's very tough. You have to be really careful. Wearing protection gear, not only gloves and goggles, and also mask, proper mask. So it's not a mask for COVID. It's a different mask.
No, that wouldn't do much good.
Yeah.
So one of the things I learned from my trip to Slovenia with my wife's uncle's bee house is that he was talking about he does his own oxalic acid treatments as required, but then I think once a year or perhaps in autumn when the brood break is happening, a different specialist, he called him the expert, that went from apiary to apiary in the bee society's members doing the treatment. So I'm thinking that he had the right equipment and training and right safety equipment as well to do that formic acid treatment for them.
They have this evaporation apparatus and
possibly
then a proper equipment and doing from the entrance of the hives. So that's how typically is going on. They also used to have for Amitra some kind of fumigation application from the entrance. I think it was on paraffin oil or something like that. Heat it up and then is spreading hot vapor of Amitras inside the colony. Also very effective one, but still, Amitras is staying on the surface of the combs, and we always have some remains in the wax, but it's not so bad as with the Cumaphos. Cumaphos is much more hydrophobic than Amitras. Also, Amitras residuas are more or less hydrophilic. Cumaphos is very hydrophobic and is actually accumulating in the wax. If wax is mixed from beekeeper to beekeeper, then all wax in the country has Cumaphos inside. So now we're encouraging beekeepers and also those facilities to make foundations that they from the wax from the same beekeeper, but you need to have some minimum quantity. Some are saying 20 kilos and 30 kilos and can make you foundations just from your wax. Of course, if you're not using then those compounds, you are on safe side. You will not have residuals in a comb. Although there is one chance. I know one ecological beekeeper, but he has neighbor beekeepers which are not ecological, and they use Cumaphos, But he had so strong colonies that they've got and rubbed those beekeepers' hives that used Cumaphos, and he got Cumaphos in his hives.
Well, you can't escape the surrounding beekeepers, can you? Whatever they're doing, you're
when they're rubbing, they're really getting so much that wax particles on the bodies. The hive entrance is completely waxy. The rabbit hives, they just take also a lot of wax particles, not only honey out of the hive. It's amazing when they're chewing, to get into the cells, and then they're really loaded with the wax. And that wax is then integrated, wax in their own hives.
To try to get away from the chemical side, I guess you've got to apply every tool in the box. The integrated pest management design would have you do chemicals as a last resort. What are some of the mechanical or cultural methods that regularly practiced in Slovenia?
Some are still doing a lot of this drone brood removal, although I talked with some bigger beekeepers. They do that in early spring. It could working well because in early spring, Varroa mites really had high tendency to search for the drone brood, and then they go in the drone brood.
Mm-hmm.
But late spring is not worth to do it. You have to also be careful because we might stimulate too much beekeepers to do that, and then the colonies were very low on the drones.
Yeah, you need enough drones in the
Yeah, you need for the
area
mating
to
good
keep
drones.
it up.
So be careful with that and
Yes.
allow good colonies to rear drones. It's very important that some good
Right.
colonies which will not be used for queen rearing to let them
Yeah.
to rear a lot of drones. We need them for the
Well,
mating of the queens.
you need that good level of genetic
Yeah.
stock out there, don't you?
So that's in nature, a big part of the selection is through the performance of the drones, and if you don't have a lot of drones, this selection is not going well. So we need them, and also if these drones are affected by the mites, they might be much weaker, and they will not be effective. So that's one thing which is not very very good, but could be early spring a good way to also see a load of the mites at your locations. When you put that maybe in a wax melter, maybe at the
Yeah.
beginning,
The
you
white
can
melter, yeah.
see, but don't wait too long, some mites on the pupae, but if it's waiting too long, maybe those mites will be at the black background and you won't be able to see them. So, or just
Yeah.
break the comb on several places and you see immediately maybe several times of the pupae, and then if see some mites, you have them, so that's of course one possibility to take one by one, look carefully to get exact count, but I'm rarely doing that, so I'm just taking the brood out and crack them and see, okay, if I see maybe in such crack several mites, I say, okay, now I have to be careful, I might have to do something more seriously. So that's
Right.
that's
Okay.
that's the way in practical beekeeping. And then, of course, one possibility would be also, but that is usually like early summer that we start with that framing, put the queen on in isolation, and then maybe combine that with the queen
Right. Full
exchange
set.
to make brood rearing stop. But
Yep.
no, in our case, it's like that we don't have honeydew flow in the forest, then our last pasture is chestnut. That is typically now at the beginning of the June. Usually is ending in the first week of June because of this earlier development of vegetation nowadays. Then we can stop the brood rearing for at least 10 days, and then we can use oxalic acid treatment, for example, at the end, and get rid of most of the mites, and then starting stimulating bees for winter development, actually for winter bees. And then we can go nicely through with just one additional treatment, uh, like in December or end of November when there is no brood anymore in the colonies. That's a good way to reduce the amount of chemical treatments.
Yeah, that sounds good. I've really learned a valuable lesson here tonight that we can do brood breaks here in summer, just like they do in, did you say Greece before, in the
Yeah, I think
Mediterranean?
that's for I think most of the Australia, maybe at the southern side where you have some kind of winter. I know it's not very rush winter, but still you have low.
Not like you have, but yeah, we do actually have snow
Yeah, I
country
know
as
in the
well.
mountain in that hilly parts, I know you have, but not on the
Yeah.
coast, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, you've
Yeah, I was
visited.
just
Yeah.
just
So
during your winter there for 2 3 days. Yeah.
Well, some parts of Australia have got a nectar flow almost year round. So that will be a bigger challenge, but it could still be feasible to force a brood break even
Yeah,
then by caging the queen and just
yeah.
forcing that brood break for a long enough cycle to do a knockdown
In tropical
if need
region,
be.
like you have a possibility. I have some experience from Malaysia that during rainy season is not so much strong pasture as maybe
Uh,
when you don't have a rainy season. And then during that time you can do again brood rearing, and then do treatment like that, or you can combine that also like with the multiplication of the colonies. So many possibilities are with that, just taking in account that Varroa mites need brood to multiply, and that's the main point. Yeah, it's also one possibility that you make new colonies just with we call dry bees. You just brush the bees and make artificial swarm. You treat those bees, still not adding the queen, and the queen will be saved, in a cage somewhere. But then these bees can be treated. You can spray them with the oxalic acid solution, and that's very effective. And then bees can be, and in this case, oxalic acid solution should be only in water when you have no comp with honey, because in such case, if they don't have comp honey, they would even drink acidic sugar solution. So you shouldn't use the oxalic acid in sugar solution in such case, but only in water. And that they will not drink it, and yeah, mites will be dropped down, and then is added the queen, and in a new hive, you are feeding them, and they will do great.
well, that's sort of emulating a little bit what the Asian honeybee, the original Varroa host, sort of do as a part of their nature is to abscond on a regular basis.
So also sometimes other bee diseases I noticed. Yeah, we tried to keep some Asian bees on campus in Terengganu, and yeah, they've got this Cerana type of one virus developing on the brood. Yeah, and the brood was dying, and that was too harsh for them. Although I was able to use meliponin propolis to treat bees, and actually it helped them. That was funny, to reduce that
That's
load of viruses in the brood, and brood was recovered. But I would need to use it on weekly basis to keep them well.
so you're using their own medicine for
Yeah, but this
themselves.
was medicine from the other species, not themselves. But Serrano is not doing
Yes.
propolis. I forgot on that. I was not careful on that to see. But then in practice, okay, those guys don't have propolis. It's not like mellifera.
That's interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't know
that's
that.
usually, it's not told to the beekeepers that, nobody really cares about it. But yeah, Serrana has no propolis. If there,
I would never
yeah,
have
if
thought of
there
that.
is too many debris, they just go out, leave
They
and
just
get
leave.
another place.
I guess that's one way of dealing with
Yeah,
it.
you,
So,
you you can imagine how that would be in humans. You just keep everything around. It's too
yeah,
much. Going to build a new house and be there. Officials, forums, and in this case, it's very good idea to have, even for small beekeeper, although I don't have that chance, to have two locations like separated 3 to 5 kilometers, and then establish like
yeah.
these reserve colonies, clean colonies on another location. That's a
Mm.
perfect. But if it's too close, then you're losing those bees because they are going back home. So you have to put them somewhere. One possibility to close them for 2 days, but yeah, it's not so good as moving them to a new location.
Well, one of the techniques that I've learned and applied here is to do the move and then put twigs and branches across the entrance, and that forces the field bees to reorient. And almost none of them go back to the old site. So, and that's when they're only 50 meters away.
Yeah, yeah, mine works. Yeah, okay. uh,
Well, I've had that. I mean, try it'd be something difficult to apply in a bee house situation, but it certainly works with the Langstroth hives. I have my home apiary is split in two, and they're about, I guess, 40 metres apart. And I've taken
Hmm.
splits from one to the other, or I've relocated an entire hive and just put the twigs, like just branches with leaves over it. So I do the move at night time, and then next morning they've got to crawl their way out through all of the leaves in the way, and they seem to think I'm in a different place. I better
Yeah,
reorient.
what
And
might possibility, but I never checked how that will work. Like we have these that we mount on the front pollen collectors. When you mount pollen collector, they
yeah,
also have to orient new because it's a new way to go out and in, and sightseeing is
yeah,
different.
yeah,
But in such cases, like if you put only one hive, you could have a problem. You have to put on all hives because they just choose easier way to go in the hive. So is the neighbor there, and you have some load. Got some nectar. The bees full of nectar. They can enter any hive. It's
yeah.
not a problem.
Of course, they've got
Yeah.
something to bring. Yes, not
Yeah.
a freeloader. Yeah. Okay. Can you think of anything else on the Varroa incident, or any words, maybe final words of advice for Australians going into it for the first time?
I think Varroa mites is just making beekeeper more observable, so they have to observe more bees, and usually make them much better beekeeper because they have to do pay more attention to the bees, and yeah, that's one thing. So easy way of beekeeping is gone, but on the other hand, we're improving our knowledge about the bees, not only mites, and how to manage the bees. So the whole beekeeping becoming maybe even more knowledgeable because of the mites. And it's easier for the young people and newbies when something like that happens because they don't need to change their regular routine. So in this case, maybe some of the older beekeepers might just stop the beekeeping with not to hassle with these new routines, but those that are eager to change their routine, they will not have a problem. So
And I suspect the ones that don't change and they just keep doing what they've always done will just land up
yeah,
losing
that's it.
colonies
So
every
that could be a
season.
problem from the neighbors, but I hope you're not so crowded with the colonies as Slovenia. So you might not have so bad effect. Now, if one neighbor
Maybe.
at 500 meters is losing colonies because of the mites, your bees will go there and collect them.
Yeah. Ah, yes, they call them mite
Yeah.
bombs. Yeah.
So maybe even one
But,
kilometer in the fall is could be a problem, but during the summer not. But in the fall, when is some pasture is not a problem such huge because bees are foraging in neighborhood on plants, but if it's not so good nectar flow, they are very prone to rob weak colonies in the neighborhood.
that just means that we as beekeepers have to be even more vigilant to compensate for the lazy beekeepers and the feral colonies
Yeah,
out there
that's
too.
maybe it's time that these social clubs of beekeepers are becoming more active and helping one to each other. If somebody is in problem, better to help him
Yep.
than to keep him alone and struggling. And maybe you can convince them, okay, you're not doing so well. Maybe especially as amateur beekeeper, to think about to reduce the number of the hives and working with the less. With the commercial is different
Yep.
stuff. They have to learn or stop.
That's a different world again. But I'm strictly in the recreational beekeeper field, and I'm heavily involved in the bee club world. And I'm in my local club, and I'm in the Amateur Beekeepers Australia. So we're all about boosting the education and support of all of our members. I think it's imperative. It's going to be really tough to do it alone anymore. You might have been able to keep bees in the backyard and almost ignore them, but I don't think those days are here anymore.
Yeah.
Just one other observation that I was given from the US is that before Varroa, American foul brood was their biggest problem, and it was widespread. And apparently, over the decades of Varroa, it's almost unheard of. It still exists in pockets, but it's not around much now. So two things on that. I wonder what perhaps the European experience is in that regard, and perhaps would better beekeeping forced on us by Varroa perhaps has brought that about.
Yeah, that could be a fact. Although for Slovenia, I couldn't say that we have this strong effect of management, better management of the colonies. We still have quite frequent detection of fall brood, but it's not in a way that I would say that maybe 1/5 of the country would be under restriction, you know. But it happens. Maybe we have 10 spots with fall brood in Slovenia. But we're in that way that if it is detected, the colony which has to be destroyed. So we are not using antibiotics as in United States. Maybe there is less occurrence that they're more prone to use drugs, not only for the mites but also for the bees, you know, like kind of prevention or something like that. They can adapt like that. But here is very strict regulation with that. So even professionals, they are not there to use it because control of the honey is quite strong. And if something like that is found in honey, you're out of the business. So this general higher attention to the bees is helpful. Maybe beekeepers can get some new insight in how the colonies is working, and maybe we can start using colonies also for something else, not only for producing honey and bee products. They're kind of monitoring devices for the environment, so we can observe how the pasture is changing through the whole year, you know. That's one thing. It's kind of also, I would say, samples of plant diversity. So that's one thing that I worked recently also on that topic. So that's very interesting, that observing just in pollen collector how diverse is pollen, how is that changing through the year. It's very interesting, you know, and maybe that's also something that can be interesting for the public to show, because you can see really, you know, with those diversity of the colors, what is happening.
Oh, well, that's right. It's really obvious in a frame of brood when you see all those wonderful different colours of
and
pollen.
you have pollen collector, you just show these pollen loads mixture.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
and you can show from week to week how it's changing, you know.
A part of your research in exploitation of bee pastures and hive technology. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Because when I started beekeeping, one of the problem was immediately shown that, okay, we have to really know very good what kind of pasture you have around the hives, and how to exploit that. So you have to have for each location kind of phenology of the presence of the pasture, how intensive is the pasture, and also geographically indicated exact location to see how far is that pasture. So it's very good to have bees as close as possible to the main source and good source, you know. I studied that as a student already, but nowadays others are doing with much better tools that I had at that time. But I did some plotting of the areas also for my bee house around what I have, what kind of plants, you know, that I have some idea of the surface and so on. And yeah, we also have now for the whole Slovenia like square kilometer size, but I think that's not enough good. I would like to have more more thinner netting, like just 100 meters, but even in 1 kilometer mesh, we can see regions which are rich with the different kind of melliferous plants, especially trees, which are interesting for producing major sorted honeys, In that way, we are organizing movement of the hives. So, and when I started doing that, then I see, okay, I have to learn how bees are really that doing. So that was the reason that I start researching waggle dance behavior and communication of the bees to understand the basics, how they exchange the information about good food resources. So that's biology behind, Still some interest in that, but that's now new guys with new tools, with even with this artificial learning and so on, it's possible to do much easier job, and mapping, all this digital mapping is present. So yeah, I think there will be some interesting developments in that. I know my colleague at the institute, he managed to check the really possible load of the colonies for some of the pastures based on the data from stations where they recorded increase change of the high weight, and then comparing with the density of the species that is producing the nectar and distance. Yeah, it's possible to do some calculations which are not far away from some kind of approximations that experienced beekeepers did, how many colonies you could have, like for 1 hectare of acacia tree or chestnut trees. So it's working very similar, but yeah.
I think we've covered a great deal of information here. It's been really useful and helpful, particularly to the Aussies here. I think we've all learned some great deal, and I wanted to thank you so much, Janko, for sharing your experience and time and knowledge. And hopefully I can get you back for another talk in the future about bee houses and Auger hives, my new passion.
That sounds great.
So thanks very much, and see you next time.
Have a nice time. Okay, bye.
Thank you.